Hello, I'm Jennifer Leitham. I'm an Ohana artist, and I'm here today to demonstrate and to do a little tutorial on playing the fretless ukulele bass. And this one is the OBU 22 made by Ohana, and this is the FL model, fretless, and LH left-handed because I play left-handed. But I'd like to just show you people that may not be experienced at playing a fretless bass that it's nothing to be afraid of. Let me just play a little bit and watch my fingers. Watch what I do with my fingers and see if you notice anything. Now, did you notice anything that might be interesting to a bass player? Well, I'll explain in that I was using a 4-note span. If you'll notice the way my fingers were moving, every time I played a note, the other fingers were ready to play the next notes next to it in a 4-note span, and they stayed that way. Because when you play a fretless bass, your fingers become the frets. So you need to have a rigid approach to that span of 4 notes on this. On a string bass, you use a span of 3 notes of F, F sharp, G if you're playing in half position on the string bass. But on a fretless bass, and especially a bass ukulele, the scale of the neck is shorter. So you need to stretch out a little bit. It's a little cramped to try to use 4 fingers and play 3 notes. So you play like that. And let me just show you the difference playing it on a fretted as opposed to playing it on a fretless. So here we are with our fretted instrument. So you see that 4-note span lays a lot easier than trying to do. So it's important to get your pinky involved. And if it's hard for you at the start of using your pinky, you can always press down with the fingers before it, so that whenever you're playing that A flat note, all the other fingers are pressing down the string, so you're not isolated on that note. So that's your weakest finger. So that's a principle we use on string bass too, and it translates well to electric bass. It gives you a little more character in your sound because you grip it a little more securely. So here, that same D-flat blues on the fretted bass. So you notice it's a little more precise maybe in the center of the note is there, but you lose a little bit of that character of the gliss into each note. It's a little bit of a breathing thing that happens when you're playing the fretless. And it's not to say one is right and one is wrong. They're both perfectly applicable, but I just think it's important if you're going to play an ukulele bass to consider that different type of expression in playing it on the fretless. Playing the fretted, you have a little bit more of inaccuracy if you're going to play double stops. that's a little bit easier to get a hold of and play in tune. But I through practice, you can accomplish that on the fretless too. The thing I find the difference between the two instruments too is that sometimes in playing with frets, you have sort of a crutch with those frets, and you pick out the notes in a very mechanical way, to where when you play them on the fretless, you have to hear everything. And not that you don't hear when you play this thing, but it's easier to kind of fake your way through then you have frets to fall back on. On the fretless, it's more like playing a violin, in that the character of the sound is definitely in your fingers, and the intonation and everything comes from the way you hear, and that comes out in the notes. So when I play the fretless instrument, I feel it's more of my own voice, more like a human voice because of the little articulation. And you can slur and slide, but you always, on a fretted, you always run that risk of that little fret buzz when you play a slur. You have that slur, doesn't have quite that same kind of expression. So anyway, that's my take on the difference between the two. And I would find that if you do decide to play a fretless bass, that you use the 4-note span and you play scales. Play your scales. I'll show you some. Okay, so back at the fretless here. So just give me an idea of what's some good things to practice to try to put this technique I'm explaining into play. So what I would suggest is that you play major scales first to try just to get the fingerings under. Like if you haven't played a whole lot, maybe start with the lowest position, like playing an F, and use the open strings. And try to get that as in tune as you possibly can. And then once you get it down like in one key, like that F or B flat or whatever, then try to do it in all keys if you can. Like start with the key of C, and then go around the circle of, I call it circle of force in this direction. So C to F to B flat, E flat. And this is the 4-note span. The circle of fifths until you get, or circle of fourths in this case, until you get back to the key of C. So you go through all 12 keys. And you get that down, you really listen to it hard, and then you try to play, if you can, to divide it into the modes. Like each step of that C scale has got, if you start on the second step, you get the Dorian, and so forth. So you go through all of the modes that way, but listen. It's listening. Record yourself and check for that intonation. See how your intonation is doing with that. And that'll get you started playing the fretless bass. Remember the 4-note, one finger per fret. In this case, our fingers become the fret. F, F sharp, G, A flat, F, F sharp, G, A flat, F, F sharp, G. So let's get started on the Pink Panther or whatever that was, Peter Gunn. So that's one approach to it. Let me play a little bit and watch my fingers stay in the 4-note span, and I'll do the shifts and I keep the 4-note span intact. To my students, I always call it the integrity of the span. So let's see, what should I play? So good luck, get started, get fretless.